What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and today I've got my hands on the Hive Home Roaster. So Matthew from Hive, who's the creator, the guy behind the whole program, came down from San Francisco to show this to me, put it on my counter, and he showed me how to use it, and I've been using it now for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and I am actually really enjoying this. So it's a very simple piece. You can see it's all stainless steel. Everything is pretty handmade, so there are some sharp edges. There are some corners you're going to want to not, rub your hands against. But that's not unusual for equipment like this anyway. Even professional roasters have issues like that. So let's go through and do a roast. So the max batch size is 6 ounces. As a roaster, I never max the batch out, so I'm going to do 150 grams, which is about 5.3 ounces. Then I'm going to preheat the base. As a roaster, I've always learned to preheat the drum, so I'm going to do that with this as well. Although Matthew at Hive mentioned that he's noticed not much of a difference between a cold and a preheated drum. So what you're going to do is you're going to go over the flame from this point, and you're going to start a timer, and you're going to basically shake, spin, back and forth, side to side, however you want to cause those beans to move throughout the drum or throughout the piece itself. You don't want them to sit still for too long because that will cause scorching or tipping on the outside of your bean. If you don't keep them moving, keep them rotating, you want them to roast evenly from the inside out or from the outside in. You don't want them to sit on hot steel for too long. A constant motion is going to be key to getting a nice even roast on this unit or any home roaster unit that you're doing on a stovetop. This is definitely going to get tiring, but keep on going until you hear first crack. So we got those first pops. We're going to take a look inside, check development. It's tough to get that angle just right. You're going to need a flashlight. Once you're at the point where you feel like it's developed well enough, you're going to drop it into a sieve or some kind of sifter to cool them off and kind of remove some of the chaff. Now that the roast is complete, I'm going to lay it down and kind of take a look at it. So at first glance, it looks relatively uneven, but what you'll notice is a lot of them still have chaff on them. So if you look a little closer, you can see it's roasted pretty evenly and the chaff peels right off. So it just didn't have enough time in the roaster rubbing against each other to remove all that chaff. This is compared to the Ikawa. So the Ikawa is a convection-based sample roaster that we use for professional roasting, and this is what the Ikawa roast looks like. You can see it's a very nice even roast throughout, so it does do a good job at developing the coffees very evenly and smoothly. So let's take a look at the Hive next to that. So the beans look a little bit different. This is the same coffee, so the way that it's developed is just quite a bit different. When you look at a convection roaster with hot air versus a conduction roaster that usually develops heat based on the beans touching a hot surface. So they look a little different, but let's look at the inside and see. So as you can see, things look pretty evenly roasted in the Hive as well. So the development is pretty standard, pretty smooth. You're not going to see a lighter inside or a darker outside as long as you keep it moving throughout the entire roast. But the way we're going to check the flavor is we're going to cup these. So I'm going to use 11 grams of each coffee. On the left cup, we're going to have the Hive roast. On the right cup, we're going to have the roast from the Ikawa. So if you look at them in the cups, they look pretty similar. The ones from the Ikawa just look a little bit more further developed. They look a little bigger. Now let's grind these up, and then we're going to take a smell. So we're going to smell the fragrance, which is the dry, and then the aroma, which is the wet. This coffee is an Ethiopian Guji, so on the left side, on the Hive, the notes I get out of smelling the dry grounds are some nice stone fruit, some subtle sweetness. Overall, it's kind of what I expected from the coffee specifically. From the Ikawa, I get those notes pretty much exactly the same, although I can tell that the Ikawa is just a little further developed. But overall, they're very similar. So we're going to add some water, we're going to steep for about 4 minutes, and then we're going to do what's called breaking the crust. As you can see, the Hive on the left-hand side crust is pretty solid. The Ikawas seem to be sinking a little bit, so that can vary on what causes it. I've seen lighter roasts do it, I've seen darker roasts do it. I'm personally not 100% sure on what causes the crust to sink. But what I do know is it isn't indicative of high or low quality coffee or roast. But we're going to break the crust at 4 minutes. I'm going to take a smell of the Hive, rinse the spoon, and we're going to smell the same coffee from the Ikawa. So I was surprised at this point that there wasn't really a major difference between the two. So they very much smelled pretty similar at this point. Once again, the stone fruit comes through, the sweetness comes through, and the one thing I did notice differently is the Ikawa definitely has a little bit stronger roasting scent to it because it's a little bit further developed. But the Ikawa roast is about 1 day older than the roast from the Hive. This wasn't roasted and cupped same day. These are about 3 days old on the Hive, 4 days old from the Ikawa. All right, so we've cleaned the surface, we've swapped out our water. Now we're gonna wait till 11 minutes to taste. And through the magic of editing, here we are. And now it's time for the fun part. So I'm gonna talk about the difference between the flavors of these two coffees. So as usual, on the left is the Hive, on the right is the Ikawa. I'm gonna taste these coffees back and forth for about 20 minutes as they cool, because something happens to coffees. If they're higher quality coffees, they tend to still taste sweet. They don't tend to decline very rapidly in terms of temperature. So both these coffees, they're the same green, roasted to as close as I could get to the same profile with not being able to really see what's going on inside the Hive, but they are very similar. I did find that the Hive coffee did seem a bit more juicy overall. Didn't quite seem as drying to my mouth as the one that came out of the Ikawa. Now that can be a difference in just overall roasting. It kind of has to be at this point because, like I said, it's the same green coffee, but the overall enjoyment of both cups is coming from the Hive. The one thing I will say, though, is that the Hive is roasting coffee that's intended to be drank as a final product. The Ikawa, more often than not, is used as a quality control or quality testing device. So we use the Ikawa to roast coffee to determine, things like first crack, yellow, milestones. We do get some flavors out of it, but we find that it's very different than the product we get out of our full-size Dietrich. That being said, Ikawas have been used to roast coffee that is served in cafes. I know people who use it for their geishas, so they're not using a full 5, 10, 15, 20 plus pound batch to roast super expensive coffee that may not sell immediately. All right, so final thoughts. I should say right off the bat, Matthew from Hive came and dropped this unit off to me, said, hey, can you use it, try it out, do a review if you feel like it. It's not something that, they pushed me to do or paid me to do. But I really do enjoy this unit. I think that people like Matthew are important to the industry, people who are passionate about coffee. So if you feel so inclined, support his Kickstarter. I'll put the link to that down below in the description, as well as the website, so you can kind of take a look around. He's legit. He used to work for Loring Coffee Roasters, if you're familiar with that. So he's a very cool guy, coffee focused, and he just loves this product and he believes in it, so he's putting his own money behind it. The Kickstarter is basically just for him so he can get better milling and machining equipment so he can make these faster and safer. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Sprometheus, the blog at Sprometheus.com, and as always, stay caffeinated, pony boy.